is going to come out in like the end of July. So
I'm impressed.
Hey guys, George Alexander here, and today we are back, but not with a Buffy reaction. We are here with a Buffy review, and today joining me for my Season 3 Buffy review is the fountain of all Buffy knowledge that I can think of. It's Ian from Slayerfest 98. Ian, how are you today?
Hello, George. Thank you for having me. This is the second show I will be on in the last few months, just talking Season 3.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh my God, exciting. Okay. Well, this is a great time to have you on because also it's the season where I discovered that Slayerfest 98 is actually a thing and not just the name of your podcast. Because I think I texted you after that episode and I was like, I literally took a step back and was like, oh my God. I was like, what is this?
I laughed so hard in that reaction when you were like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I was like, oh, it's not, you mean he didn't make it up? I was like, I just thought that it was to do with the fact that like Buffy was out around that time, and I was like, that's a really cool name. But yeah, it's still a cool name.
I had someone recently be like, is 98 like, is that like how many things you've put out or how many things I'm like, no, it's just a stupid Buffy reference. I don't know.
Well, now I can finally understand the Buffy reference and I appreciate it.
Here we are.
Here we are. So yeah, today we're going to be chatting about Season 3, thoughts, vibes, all of that. We've got a couple of notes, but we'll be going for a spin. We'll try and keep it within an hour because I understand people get bored. I would get bored. Well, I wouldn't have this actually, because Season 3, starting off, let's go into it, has been my favorite season so far.
Oh, good. Good.
Like every episode was a banger after banger after banger for me. You know, there may have been some that weren't all the way through fantastic, but each episode had at least a couple of elements that I loved about it. So I was thrilled about that.
Because a lot of people will say like they think Season 2 is better, and I think the Angelus storyline is maybe better, but we're not as consistently sitting in that storyline, and there are some like fucking clunkers between that. And I feel like Season 3 for me, 3 and 5 are the best, but I think 3 100% has like no skips. Like you said, even an episode that's like, I don't really care about the plot that much, it still has like moments that are really good and like make you laugh or make you cry or whatever.
Yeah, because I was trying to work out, I was like, I don't know if there's any like Go Fish episodes, for example, in this season, because that one was funny, but it was just a bit of when I had to go around, there's some episodes that I find that after I've done my, oh, that's okay, yeah, it was good, and then when I go to edit them, I'm like, oh no, I've got to sit through this again, like, and there's not like, where was the excite? Like sometimes you're not always reacting, and so I'm kind of like going through, going, oh, but I feel like with Season 3 there was definitely a lot. I mean, it started off so strong. Like I loved the sort of opening. The first episode I thought was really cool, and it kind of got me thinking like, oh, how long were we gonna live in this universe where Buffy is apart from? Because I personally would have liked quite, maybe not the whole series, but a few episodes of kind of them trying to deal with stuff in Sunnydale, and then sort of Buffy trying to come to terms on her own in her new small town. Would you have ever, and obviously I don't know if there's ever going to anything like that in the past, but talking of Season 3, when you were kind of going through it, would you ever interested in that, or you like, no, let's get them back together?
You know, it's funny, we will revisit this. There's a season where I thought that would have worked. There's a spot in a season that I always say that could have worked if we did that kind of plot line. Because yes, I do think I mean, I would have been fine with it this season too, because I do think it's interesting and fun watching the Scoobies have to handle things without Buffy. Just because, like, I don't know, she didn't always live in that town, right? So people had to deal with this before she was there. And one assumes there are like 85 demon vampire deaths a day in Sunnydale. So like, she's not handling all of them.
No.
So I am always curious to see how like people who do know the monsters are real, but like don't have the superpowers per se deal with it.
Yeah. I really liked seeing like the whole gang doing their things together. And I think there was definitely more of that throughout this series and to the latter half of the series, where the gang were kind of really getting a lot more involved. Obviously Willow for one, but kind of everyone wanting to put their 2 pence in, if you were. And so that's something I really appreciate about the series. But yeah, I was kind of like, when she went, I mean, I cried I cried so much in this in series 2 for some reason. Like most episodes, it would be the it's I don't know, it's the score, or I mean, the score's phenomenal in Buffy, like fantastic. But yeah, like even when she went, even though I was like, I would have preferred her not to, when she went back and Joyce opened the door, I was like, oh my god. So like, but yeah, I kind of liked the different setting, kind of Buffy being on her own and being with the new Amy. So that I really liked, and kind of again, yeah, seeing where those characters had been. I think this series as well, something that, well, I mean, one of my favorites is Cordelia. So like Cordelia, especially, I think kind of went on a roller coaster, because I mean, obviously she's kind of with the gang at the beginning, then halfway through she's back to after one of the most traumatic experiences I've had in my life, which was the Cordelia fake out death.
So mean.
A vile behavior, where like there was snot and everything. So to go to that point, and then she kind of distanced herself from them again, and then she like came back, and then by the end of it, she was kind of still feeling a bit alone. What are your thoughts on like the gang and Cordelia in this sort of series?
I mean, I say this a lot, but I think Cordelia has one of the best like arcs on TV. That does continue into Angel. But I love that by season 3, because people feel it does get better on Angel, and it does, but I do feel like even by season 3, she's had a pretty good arc, right? Like season 1, she was just the mean girl, couldn't stand them. But you got the impression there was a little bit more, how the fact that she picked up on like to go to Buffy for help.
Yeah.
And then I think by season 3, it's like she still gets annoyed by them and will like make fun of them, but she's basically a Scooby member, even after the like getting the like metal bar through her like side. Because I do think a really important moment in her character, like just her character's journey, is in Helpless, when Buffy and Giles are having the fight after she finds out that he had been drugging her, and Cordelia walks in and is very Cordelia. She looks gorgeous. And I did an Insta Live with Charisma Carpenter like a year and a half ago, and I brought this scene up with her specifically. And it's funny because to her, she was like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah, that's like I think a really important Cordelia moment, that when she turns and sees that Buffy needs help, she's not making a joke. She's just like, yeah, of course. Like, she drops it all and is like, oh yeah. You need me to drive you home? Okay. And that like makes me cry, because I love Cordelia, and I love seeing, I appreciate that we got that moment rather than continuing her not understanding what's going on. It was like, she at the very base understood, oh, Buffy is my friend that needs help. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. And I think that kind of sums up Cordelia, where it's like, she'll make fun of your outfit, but the moment you like really do need help, she'll help. She'll be there. Right.
100%. Like I was going to bring up, because that moment to me stuck in my mind, because I was just like, and I think I cried as well in that, because it was just the moment that, you kind of saw, and she was like, will you take me home? And she's just went like, of course. And I was like, because I was like, this is something, she can try, and she'll always play, maybe the shallow or the not caring up at parts, but like you said, deep down she does care. And so that was a fantastic moment. So then that was kind of big with Cordelia, and expanded over pretty much all of the Scooby Gang minus Giles and Buffy, was the affair. If we want to call it affair, the moment of madness, because here's the thing, the first 2 seasons, I liked Xander. I know from what, well, I don't know anything spoiler wise, but I know that there's the seasons go on, a lot of people something or whatever. There's things that are done that maybe mean that they don't really like him as much anymore. This was the first series where I was kind of towards the end of it, at least, where I was a bit like, okay, I can kind of see his point, especially towards. In fact, I think it wasn't the prom episode. It was the one before the prom episode, where he went in and sort of saw Cordelia and was like just being mean to her. And I understand she does that, but I was like, in my reaction, I was like, you literally were the one who were in the wrong here. Like, how are you taking moral high ground on this situation? What are your thoughts and feelings on that whole foursome triangle square thing?
So we've been going through season 3 on my Patreon again, because it's the 25th anniversary of season 5. And this is the first time that I realized I kind of wish they could have just broken up and it wasn't this big, like, I don't know. I actually did kind of, none of those couples are like my favorite couples in Buffy by far, but I think as a Scooby gang, I wish we had sat with them longer as that being the Scooby gang of like these two couples, Buffy and Giles. And it feels like it was a little too short lived. Like I think the energy and the vibe was like fun with that foursome. I don't think any of those couples really work that well. I also don't, because I was watching a bunch of your reactions earlier. I think it's the Homecoming episode when you were like, I don't know that I didn't buy the Willow Xander affair either. Like it didn't land.
No, I agreed. Like I was like, okay, I get like in the first season and whatever, or maybe the beginning of the second half, the first half of the second season. Like I understand, but like at this point, I was like, we're way far past this now. Like, why are we returning to it? And it kind of like even made me slightly, which is a very rare thing to happen, like annoyed at Willow, because I was like, Willow, babe, I was like, come on now, you had your clarity, last season, like we don't need to be, I understand people go back to bad habits, but that it just sat a bit funny with me. And I really like Oz. I think he's really cool, but yeah, I do agree with you, like in terms of like their relationship is just a bit too, I don't know if it's safe. It's just too like all the time. I'm like, I feel like they don't challenge each other enough and things like that. So, but like, I understand in the moment of series 3 that that's kind of what she needed. And it was like a protection thing. But yeah, I agree. Like the whole affair thing was horrible. And like them seeds. And I don't know. Yeah, it just, and it kind of, I don't know. It just, I didn't like everyone just kind of getting over it quickly. I mean, okay, well, it's done. And like, we're all best friends again. And I'm like, it was just, but Cordy's just not with us anymore. Right. And I'm like, why? I would have loved something with like a scene or half an episode with Oz and Cordy and them kind of like going through it. I don't know if you feel the same, but like that kind of just a bit more with it.
Because I actually like when Oz and Cordelia have to have scenes together, just them, because they are so different.
Yes.
But Oz isn't phased by her, right? Like he's not, no matter what she's saying, he's just like, okay, whatever. Oz is my forever Buffy crush, by the way. That is my man. And I even think now that he still is like hot, and like I liked his like alt look. Don't love the baggy pants, but that's okay. That was a style.
Yeah, that's fine. No, yeah, I agree. I think and I think for Oz as well, it's the way he talks. Like I'd said in some reactions, like he's just like so smooth talking and so like sarcastic and just like deadpan. I'm just like, oh my god, like this is I understand that. I mean, obviously, my number one is my heart and soul Spike, but I think he would be like a good second.
See, it'll work out well for us because Spike would be a very close second, and then Angel would be.
See, that's the 4-way that is destined, not the dodgy one that did this season. So kind of moving on, then I want to speak about, because I think she also had quite a big step up this season, was Willow. Because now we're really seeing her a lot more as a Wicca witch. I don't know. Does she call herself a witch?
She does both, Wicca.
Yeah, Wicca witch. That's something that I really loved after the end of season 2, when she had some sort of like exorcism moment, which that hasn't returned. I'm intrigued. I mean, I don't know if you would count it as spoiler. Will that ever be revisited? What happened? Why she suddenly, or is it just the fact that she was destined to be a witch? It's never revisited. Okay.
It's just kind of like she found out how to do a big spell, and that's a big deal.
Okay, fine. Yeah, because there was like times in this that I thought, I can't remember. Maybe it was when she was doing. There was one spell that she did in this season that I think was like a fairly bit, and I was like, oh, I wonder if she's going to have that moment again but she didn't, and I was kind of okay, so fine. So that means
you said something that I thought was kind of funny, because I was like, I forget which reaction it was that I watched, where you were like, oh, I wonder if I think you said something like maybe it's because Willow's spell messed up angel or something. And I was like, oh, that would have been interesting if they did. Because I mean, you finished the season, so you know that's not what happened. But like, I thought that would have been like interesting, and I never thought about that. And when you said that, I was like, oh, I wish they had done that actually. Like, ooh, the spell created X, Y, and Z problems or whatever.
Yeah, I kind of thought like it was that was like especially because he came back, and I was like, well, this has got it. Or I mean, again, I'm only halfway through, so we could find out eventually. And in literally the last, just today I watched Buffy season 4 episode 3 and Angel episode 1 series 1 episode 3 with the Spike double, the one with the ring. And in that he keeps on about saying, you know, about the reason that he was brought back. And so that was obviously this season we were kind of really questioning what it was, why that reason was, and blah blah. So I think that would have maybe just added a bit more to it. But again, there's still a lot way to go. And yeah, I just think that yeah. I would just, again, the one thing I am looking forward to that I'm hoping will happen in this season and further is just pushing Willow's magic a bit further, because season 3, I feel like, yeah, by the end of it, we were quite comfortable. You know, it was a lot of throwing pencils, but it was still fun. So something I want from season 4 is a bit more of witchy Willow.
Does it feel, or I'm like curious, does it feel organic to you, her development into like the witchy stuff?
I think so, because when it happened in series 2, just after Jenny, it was when she said like, oh, I saw like these stuff on her thing, and I've been kind of looking at like some of it, and to me I was like, oh yeah, like I see that. So I think for me it has felt natural. What other people have you that think that it's forced? Or
I'm just always curious, because some people think in season 3 that Cordelia feels too different from the way she felt. And there are some people that have said that about like Willow. I mean, you know, this is not a spoiler to say her character develops more, that people have felt that was a little like I've seen people say that some of that they feel is a little too much of like a character rewrite, but I feel like they're also supposed to be like teenagers. So like it makes sense that they would be still changing.
Yeah. I just wish that, I mean, sorry, this is a season 4 thing, but like that I didn't need any more hair chopping off, because that Sims 2 haircut that she's got currently is absolutely not bad. But anyway, that's for series 4.
It was a style back then, though.
Apparently. But yeah, so Willow, I mean, she's always been, and I loved, I'm trying to think, I mean, it's so funny, like, look at I forget how many episodes there were, that was, I think, was it one, and maybe it was just after the breakup when she was like crying to Oz. Actually, tell you what it was. It was actually when she was trying, I think it was just after that, trying with Oz to kind of get in his pants. And I really like her vulnerability, but I feel like over this series as well, she's kind of become less, not vulnerable, but less, maybe it's not the word, naive, I would say, about things. I think, and she always has like brilliant one-liners, for example, or just like moments that are just like iconic for me. And for example, again, she did it in this series, and I think it was in the last series as well with Jonathan, where she does a sort of police investigation on him, and she's like trying to push him, and she's playing the bad cop, and I think she does that really well. Speaking of bad cop, let's quickly move into Willow version 2 from the parallel timeline, which again, that was seeing that episode as a standalone was great, but then for them to revisit that.
Yeah. I think it's like, that's an episode I would show people who maybe like don't know Buffy that well, to like get them into it. Like, I think it's a really good, and I feel like this is the thing the show does really well. Like you just said, it's a good standalone, but then it's even better in context. And I feel like this show does that really well, where it's like, yeah, this could be a standalone, but it is even more enjoyable in context, because you like, oh, the nods, the character shit, like you pick up on that more.
Yeah, no, agree. It was definitely, The Wish is one of my favorite episodes, because I think it was just a great, I always love a good what if episode. And I was saying to Nick that, because obviously he's starting his Doctor Who journey, I said there's a very similar episode to that in series 4, with a sort of what what could have been, with
is that Donna Noble's season?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay.
So again, that's kind of, but it was funny. I feel like for most of this series as well, that I realized how much Russell T Davies had taken from Buffy and Angel for his shows, especially Angel. Like when I was watching the first two episodes of Angel, I was like, oh, this is torture. This is weird. So it's nice to see that years later that, you know, this property is like still heralded and then influenced, you know, a show that was my childhood show. That's funny that, you know, somebody else's childhood show. So that I really love. But yeah, sorry, the Wish episode and sort of, and which was the one that she came back in?
Dead Man's Party?
Dead Man. No,
where
sorry.
Buffy comes back?
No, sorry. I meant when evil.
Well, Doppelganger.
Vampire. Doppelganger. Jesus, yeah, it was called Doppelganger. I really loved kind of seeing Alison play evil a bit more because she was great. I enjoyed her so much in the Wish episode that it was great to see her do that.
And you
again.
can tell she had fun, right? Like,
yeah. And like playing opposite herself as well. And then the ending, her being like, maybe she'll be good, and then just immediately dying straight. You're like, oh well. never mind. But actually, talking about episode 2, I do want to talk about that because that was actually, again, and that's what made me think, wow, this, even though it was only episode 2, this is such a strong season. I'm a huge zombie fan, so that was ticked off. But the drama and the fallout, which is something I enjoyed, of Buffy leaving in the middle of the, and you know, her coming back and her trying to leave again, and sort of everybody having those conversations in the middle of the party. You'd said about Joyce and how she treats Buffy coming back. What are your thoughts on all of that then?
So I also love Joyce, but season 3 she really pisses me off because
blasphemy.
She does not once apologize, and she is the adult, and she told Buffy to leave. I understand that she definitely said it out of anger. She didn't really mean it, but you are the adult and you still did say that. So for me, the only time she's like, oh yeah, I'm a mother, I make mistakes. And it's like, that's not an apology. You are being an asshole and you're yelling. That is not an apology. You can't just like, while yelling at someone, be like, yeah, and I make mistakes, whatever. That doesn't count. And I really hated that there was never a scene where Joyce was like, because sure, Buffy shouldn't have left, but I don't blame a teenager if their mom says, you have to get out and then leaves.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. I just like, there's no world in which I actually think that's Buffy's fault. Like I fully place the blame on Joyce. And I hate that the show blames Buffy. Like we get, I think it's at the end of Dead Man's Party when Willow and Buffy have that like conversation where they're joking. They're at the like little like cafe and like making like whatever jabs at each other. There's like a little bit of like, well, we were kind of mean to you, Buffy, but then like, I don't know, there's just not acknowledged, and it drives me nuts. Like I hate that Joyce yells at her daughter in front of all of their friends for running away when she kicked her out of the house.
Yeah, I will say, not so much on the Joyce part. I understand your part, and I do. Yeah, I can see that. There maybe should have been another scene after that where they kind of sat together, and you know, there was like a moment that to me that would have worked. Like even I probably would have preferred that to be the ending rather than her and Willow. Like I understand her and Willow had, because I found myself getting annoyed with Willow in that episode, and I was like, surely you know what she went through. Like, how are we being like such a dick to her? So that was another moment I was like, I felt Willow was. I was like, I understand that she's angry and annoyed because her best friend left her, but I'm like, also, you know, let's have some perspective. But I think that was what that episode was about, that everyone kind of, all those characters were all in their own minds and weren't looking at everybody else's feelings when it came to the bigger picture. But it was such a fantastic episode to have like zombies then incorporated with actual just real life drama. So, and it was funny because that episode, and then of course the only other one that you can be mad at Joyce at, but it wasn't Joyce, was when she creates Moo. Because I was like, that whole episode I was like, it's not her, she's being controlled, this is not Joyce would never do this. But it was a great episode, so funny and like crazy. But I'm kind of I feel like maybe Joyce in this series as well, we've definitely seen her more. Like I loved kind of, which episode was it? Oh, it was Lover's Walk, when the moment with Spike and she's she's chatting, and then he's like that in the background going, and she like sits to them, she's like, some like, so you're a vampire, and it's just like the most like, I love how by the end of the series she's trying, like even in the graduation part 1, when she's like, oh, it's not like, you know, the demon's going to come and take everything. She's like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish I had said that. So that's something that I've enjoyed, that she's, although still being a mum, she will, and kind of obviously wary about what Buffy's up to, and still obviously does care about things. I think it's nice that she is kind of, by the end of it, embraced, or trying as best she can to embrace that side of Buffy's life, because inevitably it's never going to go away. So yeah, Joyce is always a bae for me, and I think she had some great episodes in this series, and I always seen her in she's in the first episode of series 4, but again, I'll be intrigued to see how much we see her moving forward now that kind of Buffy's not at home, and if she'll be as regular. But I think all in told, this has been a great series for character development. I feel like when you look at the beginning of this series towards the end, everybody has had some sort of storyline. And
I will tell you that you will still think that even when you finish the series, like, oh wow, like season 3 was really like, I love that you can even say that in context of only having watched 3 seasons and a few other episodes. But like that still holds up. Like rewatching it for the 25th anniversary, I was like, oh wow, a lot of the character stuff. Like, I mean, the characters are great from the beginning, but a lot of the development starts here in this season, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And someone who we haven't mentioned, who definitely had a roller coaster of journey in this series, is Faith. Faith, she went back, forth, up, down, everywhere. So I loved Faith going, and I thought she was really cool. I thought she was breath of fresh air. I was so sad that we didn't I would have really loved Kendra to have been in more episodes, minus the accent. I thought she was a great character. But Faith, I thought, kind of brought an extra element to the gang. But what I liked about her as well is that she was there, and she's definitely, you couldn't say that season 3 wasn't about her, but she wasn't always there. It's when she was on screen, her presence was felt, but it wasn't like, I didn't feel like she was infiltrating the gang and like there's just this new person here. What were your thoughts on Faith towards the beginning of the series?
I always love Faith. So when I got into the show, I used to always say it's because this is when I was closeted. I wanted to be Oz, and I thought Faith was hot. Those are switched in reality. I wanted to be Faith, and Oz is hot. Not that Faith isn't also hot, because she's clearly gorgeous. But like I really enjoy Faith, and I think, like you said with Kendra, it's like I like that Kendra, Buffy, Faith is the Buffy to Kendra the way Buffy is the Kendra to Faith. Like,
yes.
Buffy was the unruly one to Kendra, but then Faith is way more out there with like not listening to rules, not giving a crap. And I feel bad for Faith. I like waver, because they're, doing the podcast, I've met so many people that feel very strongly like, oh, I hate what the gang did to her, and oh, I hate what she did to the gang. I'm very much in the middle, where like I feel bad for her, but also when Willow gives her that talk in Choices and is like, you had a choice. We tried to welcome you and you did not. You are a waste. I'm like, yeah, Willow, fucking tell her. And people like get really, I have people right now arguing on my Instagram and comments about who, well, they didn't treat Faith right, and well, blah, blah, blah. And like, literally, I just posted that thing last night, and people are arguing about it, about who was in the right, who was in the wrong there. And I do think that's what makes Buffy so enjoyable, is that it's not always so black and white. There's like moral gray areas. You can feel bad for Faith. You can, then she's like awesome and a badass, but also be like, well, but she's in the wrong. She's a fucking murderer, And I think Eliza Dushku fully embodies the role in a way that makes you feel like Faith more than we act. Like, it feels like we know Faith, even though we don't get a lot of her backstory, right? It's only like sometimes they mention it. But she feels like a fully fleshed out character to me.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's funny that you say about people arguing on which side of things, because to me, them that I can think of now on the top of my head, and maybe if I went back and really looked, there's nothing that stands out when I go, oh, they like at the beginning where they ostracized her in any shape or form. To me, I think that Faith was just bored by the end and kind of she needed more, and I feel like that was kind of where she began to depart from the group in a way, was because she was always reaching. For her it was a high, whereas for Buffy it was a job, I feel. And she was always climbing for that next high, and then unfortunately, it ended up being the wrong one. And so I kind of see her more as, I mean, this could be completely me thing, but like as an addict to like what she does, and how similar to what happens to a lot of addicts or can do is, if they don't have the right support and they aren't able to get out of a certain thing, they end up in a similar way that Faith does at the end of that series, where she's left, in a coma. We still don't know whether she'll come back or not. And so for me, I think that's where I see Faith as like, I don't see her as a bad character per se. Like, obviously when you're watching the show, you're like, oh, for God's sake, because you're always going to probably more so root for Buffy and the gang, except when they're fighting Spike. But I kind of felt, and this kind of goes into this I think it was the last couple of episodes, obviously the graduation episodes, and specifically we'll talk about the dream that she has with what Buffy has with Faith in it. And I just felt like, she was just, I just thought like, oh, in another world, in another thing, she would have, everything would have been fine. But I think, maybe because she didn't have that support. Buffy, she was coming in and it was Buffy's friends, Buffy's mum, Buffy's watcher.
World, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it was always going to be about, the show's always Buffy the Vampire Slayer, so it's always going to be, gearing on her. When she comes in at the beginning, everyone, Buffy's like, oh great, she gets on with my mum, she gets on with my watcher, and that's because it's like the shiny new toy in town. But by the end of it, she's kind of just sort of like left her own devices. I feel like they, in a way, I suppose, maybe I do think they did try with her, but I think in a way they also did give up on her. Because they're just like, oh, there's other things to do. And I think nobody else other than Buffy, when they were working, were really, by the end of it, were really checking in on her. So I can see why things happened.
Yeah, and that is a lot of people's arguments, is like, why didn't she go live with Joyce and Buffy? Why didn't the Watchers take her in? She was like a teenager in this like crappy motel. And like, I don't know, I feel like sometimes with that, you got to also chalk it up to, it is a TV show. Like, I don't know. I don't want to listen to them sit and talk about like, where am I going to live? Oh, well, maybe I'll stay here. And like, I don't want episodes of her, moving in. And also like, Joyce doesn't know her that well. So I would understand why Joyce isn't like, let's have this other teen girl live in my house, right? Like, I don't know.
No, I get that. But yeah, I really did enjoy as well. One thing where we kind of got a glimpse of that with Buffy, and by the end of it, I suppose she kind of had a little bit of that, was the Bad Girls episode, which was crazy but a lot of fun to see. And I saw it, but I feel like Nick, for example, said that the lesbian undertone maybe of that episode. Do you think that was there?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Did you not?
I mean, kind of. Like at times I was like, oh, okay, but it wasn't like. So I guess it was more of an undertone than an overtone.
I'll tell you my thing about them is Faith we have all been there. Anyone who pretends to not, which sometimes people do, I feel like, get a grip. We've all been the person who's like had feelings for a straight person, right? Like Faith reads as the queer person in love with her straight friend, and the straight friend is not picking up on it. But like, maybe if they were drunk, Buffy would hook up with her. Maybe that's like my reading on them.
Okay. I can see that then. Yeah, I definitely do think that, if you were to, Faith is definitely queer coded for sure in that respect. Like when you kind of step away and look at like her, like I can definitely see that. But yeah, I think obviously the dance, like there was kind of there was a couple of moments in Bad Girls where I was kind of, oh, a little flirtation, and then obviously the dancing scene's quite erotic in a way. So I do see that. But yeah, I don't know if it was maybe I need to go back and kind of revisit. I can see it, but it wasn't like maybe completely obviously the first time around. Only when like and Nick said it and you kind of said a bit more there, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I can see how that is.
Well, one of my co-hosts, I think Dana said this, that she actually just reads them as like girls that went to because I think Dana went to an all-girls prep school, and she was like, that's how like girls are friends at all-girl prep school. Like it just becomes a super intense relationship and then they hate each other. So, it's not, because it's not, people will say it's written to be like that. It was not written to be like that. I think Faith and Eliza exude such like sexual energy that that's kind of what happened.
Yeah. No, I can see that. Yeah, she's got, even from like, it's just the way she's like, she speaks, and they say to use that like the whole like, hey B, like all that like sort of moment. She's definitely and Faith is a very sexual being, like, she said when she's working, like she wants to go back and have sex, like that's
right. And like things. Eliza Dushku is kind of, I met her at Comic-Con once and she put her arm around me and was like, you're really cute. I like your hair. And I was like, oh my God, Faith just told me I'm cute. Like
that's, I mean, anyone gives that, because
she like looked me up and down and I was like, woo.
Damn, you felt a little. Well, yeah, that she. I mean, her looks throughout the whole show were like in series 3 have been like fantastic. I was like, oh my God, this was literally like teenage me. The one that I didn't enjoy was when our demon, I was gonna say demon headmaster, our demon mayor was like, come out, and she was in that like pink dress, and I was like,
and he was like, you look great, and I was like,
yeah, I was like, that's a Buffy thing. Like Buffy Summers like wears that, like Faith wears like the cool, and Buffy does have cool. She likes leather,
but it makes sense the mayor would want her in like that, because he's like a gee golly whatever, leave it to Beaver guy.
Yeah, he definitely is. We will touch on the mayor and that finale towards in a minute, but I want to just go through the. So something else that was good, I definitely saw in this, was the improvements on special effects and fighting
and lighting, right? It's actually, you could see what's going on.
Yeah, because when I watched the first 2 seasons and I was watching them because everyone was like, don't watch the ones on Disney Plus, we don't like them. Why is that? Do you
George,
know?
Everyone's lost their mind because you can't see shit in those first 2 seasons. I prefer the remasters because you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
And so like, I know it's not on Disney Plus over here, but it's on Hulu, and Hulu has like VHS tape quality Buffy. And I don't like watching it. Like for me, it's like pain. It's hard to watch it because it looks grainy. It'll be like a box on a flat screen TV and still look grainy. So I prefer the remastered. They do later on in the seasons. I will say, like, I think 5 and up is when it's not that good because, as you said, even in 3, you can tell they got a bigger budget. You can feel that they get a bigger budget moving on. They get better with camera stuff. And some scenes, it does like a little bit look like Buffy has clown makeup on because they just kind of must have done a generic HD upscale upgrade. And so sometimes it's like her blush is like very, very, very bright, and so it makes her like right here cheeks bright red. Sometimes it's like some certain scenes the color's a little off, but I don't know, I prefer it.
Yeah, that's fair. There we go. Everybody, don't come in the comments about it. Yeah, I was just like, because horror bandwagon, I'm like, do you know where we can get them? Because everyone's telling us to not watch these ones on like Hulu, and I was like, I had to like find them on. I found them legally. Let's just say I found them legally.
George, remind me to send you a link that's legal later after we're done this.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. But sorry, so back to the sort of the special effect. I really liked by the end of this season. I think maybe it was the beginning of this. I feel like it was a bit further in though, when we kind of got, which I feel like has stayed for a while, so may stay for a bit. Then the new staking vampire disappearing, where you see like the skull first before they drop. I really like that. I mean, I didn't really have, I think all of them have been fine so far. I mean, it's always going to look like CGI because it is CGI and it's from the 90s. But I kind of like that kind of element where it's also adds a little, you see the skull. And so I really like that part about it. But the fight choreograph is something definitely that stood out to me in terms of like being a step above. I think there's Buffy, there's fantastic fights, but like the fight between her and Faith had some great fights towards the end of the series. Like Enemies was like such a good fight scene.
I think because like, of course, the graduation day part 1 is like the best one, but I think all of their fights are really, really good. And they're really good at showcasing their different fighting styles.
Yes.
And they're always like emotionally charged, right? It's like you feel like, ooh.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think you just feel like there's been a bit. I feel like at times in the early seasons it was all a bit too blocky in terms of the way that everything was. Whereas now I feel like, this definitely feels a lot more fluid and realistic, and you can kind of not see the stunt actors as much, except for one. Which is the lunch lady, because maybe that was not the lunch lady who got thrown across the floor. I'm telling you,
clearly just right a man now, in a smock.
There has been times when I've like looked, like it's usually the hair, and or like you can just about see like, and I'm like, that's not, I could tell, that's not Buffy. I mean, it doesn't take me out, but
yeah, I mean, that's why I feel like that's why they do a lot of hairography when they're, because Buffy's always like,
yeah,
and it's like they got to make sure the hair's like in her face so you can't tell it's a stunt double.
Yeah, exactly. It's definitely a lot smoother and cleaner in this, and I think she just feels a bit more. I'm like, oh yeah, she knows. But what I like about Buffy as well is that it's not. There's still usually a little bit of a struggle, so it's not like, oh, she's a superhero where it's just like, oh, you get out my way, bang, you're dead. Like I like that at times she like gets taken out, or like she gets taken aback by something that's done, and so I think again that kind of adds that more human element to her, rather than say, I feel like maybe, although to be fair, he does fall around a lot, but Angel has a bit more of like a super, well, obviously a vampire, but like that supernatural like fighting element where you can see, like you said, emotionally charged is usually her fights, and so her and Faith will make mistakes because they're kind of, emote the adrenaline things running through the head, and I think it's good that you kind of, I felt anyway that I could see that in this series. Nick put this on. I don't know if you can enlighten me on this. The establishment of Buffy's fighting grunts and yells. Sound effects, laughing face. Do you feel like she grunts and fights, yells a lot in this season?
I mean, that's when I did the hair and I was like, she does. Yeah, there's a lot of like, like it's like a lot of that.
Yeah, a lot of Lara Croft in, sort of those games. I think, but again, I think that's good, because if she doesn't, I mean, maybe sometimes there can be too much, but if you doesn't, then you'd be like, well, why isn't she? Those girls who play tennis, they're like, every 5 seconds, and that's it. She's basically doing that, like running about and hopping over and things. So I understand why she grunts and yells, but yeah, it was. I feel like it adds to the fact that she's human. Yeah. I think so. Okay, something that I want to touch upon, because you said you actually recently just touched upon this the other day, and it's the episode Earshot. Now, fantastic episode. I mean, I went again. What I love about some of these Buffy episodes is I think I'm smart as shit, and I'm like, it's this person, they do it, and I'm like, it's Mr. Plum in the drawing room with the dagger, and then it's like an alien from outer space. So something I really loved about that episode was the twists and turns of it. But obviously, I was kind of made aware, and you'd also mentioned this as well, obviously, that it was around, the same time of Columbine, and that it was actually pushed. I believe it was pushed back. Like it aired after the finale. Is that correct?
It is. So it was supposed to have aired in, I think, April of that year.
Mm-hmm.
The finale was May. Mm-hmm. I'm playing off the dates I've used for my anniversary recordings. Earshot didn't air till that September in America.
Wow.
Okay. And Janice Benson, who wrote the episode, came on to talk about that episode with us, and she's a delight and one of my favorite Buffy writers. She said it was like the network, but they all kind of were like, yeah, we get it. Even though the episode is not what you think it is, because they like make it seem like it's that. She said that she was like, I get it. This might be like a little too touchy for people. Because I always viewed it as kind of like, but it's not about a school shooting. So why? But she kind of laid it out better for me, where I understood why. Because she was like, we make it seem like it's a school shooting. We make it seem like that's what we're leading to. So she said she understood, and she was like, no one disagreed, and was just like, yeah, sure, delay it.
And were you watched it when it was on? Did you watch it when it was on? Right.
I didn't watch it consistently until season 5.
Okay, so I was going to say you don't remember that kind of moment of them being like, "Oh, it's coming on later," and everyone being like, "What?"
Graduation Day Part 2 was also delayed, but only I think a month. And I missed back then it was like you missed a lot of episodes, but I didn't know it was delayed, and I thought I just missed it. And so I was like, all right, well, I don't want to continue watching. Let me like catch season 3 in reruns so I can watch the finale. Then I just fell out of it because I never caught it. And then I didn't go back to it till season 5 for one specific reason. But yeah, so like I started watching in 3, but was only off and on. And then because I thought I missed so many episodes, but it was because 2 of them were delayed. Yeah.
Okay, so you returned. I wonder if that return could be to do with the cryptic dream that happened in season 2 finale. Who knows? Because I was told to note down the most random sentence of all time, that will come back at some point. So I'm intrigued to see that. But I actually do want to touch on. I think I can understand why they did what they did, and I think Earshot. I mean, I'm such a Jonathan stan. Like, I think. Like every time he's on the screen, I'm like, oh, I like
George. I love that every time he was on screen, your reaction, you're like, oh, Jonathan. I'm like, I don't know anyone who's like standing him this much. Like,
let me tell you, me and Jonathan, like, we'd be friends. Like, there was just something so endearing about it. And I was like, that we see like the rest. He's like into like the rest of the people at the school, like the fact that it's always like even in episode 2 where he's like, are you looking at me funny? Or she says something to him and he's like there by like the salsa and stuff, and he's like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh my god, it's him. Yeah, I love Jonathan. I loved that scene between him and Buffy in the tower. I would have liked a bit more after with it. Like, I kind of understood they played it off as a joke where it was like, oh, maybe I'll take it to prom. And she's like, oh my god, no, I'm not desperate. But I kind of would have liked. And maybe another scene in the next episode with maybe him and Buffy like talking or like seeing how things work. Because I feel like it just kind of was left. He was like, I was going to kill myself, and then it was just kind of like, oh, and then suddenly we were looking at something else, and then it was, And I was kind of like, I would have liked that to have been addressed a bit more, personally, but maybe that's because I'm a Jonathan stan. Maybe I wanted to just get a bit more.
I mean, I love how much you love him. That. I get a kick out of that. Do you know that actor like is like a very famous writer? Like he was
Oh, really?
He created the show Empire.
No, really?
And he has, I think, an Emmy for like a HBO movie he wrote. Yeah, he's like a big, yeah.
I always knew Jonathan would do well. He was at it in.
Like, I'm so proud of my baby.
Like, he was amazing. And touching on Jonathan, I want to talk about the prom.
I cried watching you watch it earlier today. I want you to know that.
The mess that exuded from me was far too much. It was just so, and because Jonathan, it's Jonathan the Vampire Slayer, right? Because he had that speech, and I think because of, I suppose to me that was kind of the connection between the Earshot episode and sort of the finale, was that sort of moment. Just made it like extra special. But I mean, the prom, how does it make you feel?
There's episodes of Buffy that'll make me cry if it'll still make me cry if it's like hits right. That moment will never not make me cry. Like I said today, I cried watching you watch it. And clearly I've seen it like a bazillion times. And hilariously enough, this week I'm recording for the 25th anniversary of prom. Okay. And that scene is like one of my favorite scenes in the show. Because it's like, I like that Buffy I like that it's quiet, and even Buffy's a little like, wait, what? And man, I could cry just like talking about it, but like, it's so beautiful. And like you said, the fact that it's Jonathan giving her the award, and she like just saved him in a different way than she normally saves people. And knowing that like Buffy, who doesn't get the recognition she deserves, is finally like, everyone is like, hey, we recognize what you've done for us. And it's like, oh, this is so nice. And then Angel coming in the moment after that, it's just a lot of things.
It's those last like 15 minutes, I was like, oh my god, like it was just thing after thing after thing. It started with the Xander and the Cordy dress thing.
I love that.
I love it. And then I think when I was talking to him about it, he was like, "Yeah, damn right, you should have done it." And I was like, "Yeah, all right." I was like, I wasn't looking at it like that. I was kind of just like seeing them connect again after so long. I was kind of like, and she was again the way she was like, "Thank you." And one thing I will say was I was kind of just we are touching on the problem, but her and Wesley at that point was kind of, because I was still seeing it, even though she was 18, like literally says she's 18, you know, get on with it. I was still a bit like,
she's a student, yeah.
But I do like Wesley, but I also kind of like they kind of, in the last episode, they had their kiss where I said he does not look like he can kiss. That was a really awkward kiss they were having. But I kind of like that after that they were both kind of like, okay, so and it was like they kind of got it out the system.
See ya.
Yeah. Which I like, but I did really like. I didn't touch him on the character, but I did actually quite like Wesley, his character in this, because although at times, he was annoying, that was what he was there to be. But I think by the end, he had kind of solidified himself, especially in the finale, with helping and trying to do the best he could.
Yes, and I like seeing like in Choices, I keep referencing this because we just recorded that one, but like in Choices, when he actually is the one that's like, they'll have supernatural safeguards, you can't just go in. Oh, did you all forget about that? Look, I was right for a change. And like, I appreciate that it's not just always bumbling idiot. It's like he does have a point sometimes. He is a bumbling idiot, but then sometimes he is like being the adult in the room. The thing about him and Cordelia, that the reason I forget that it's like, this is maybe a problem, because those actors look the same age. Like they're very clearly the same age. So I always have a lot of trouble reminding myself, oh wait, that's not good. Like I'm like, well, they both look like 25 or 30, so they're good.
Yeah, so it's fine. But it was not. I'm glad that they got to dance together. One thing that I thought was going to happen, which didn't, and I don't know, looking back, how I would feel about that, is I kind of wanted maybe her and Xander to like swap and like dance together just for a moment, but maybe
Buffy and Xander.
Cordelia and Xander.
Oh,
like
okay,
when they were like, I thought that may have been a nice like little moment, but then they kind of already had their like thank you, and I guess they were kind of already preparing for. They maybe didn't want to add that in because she was leaving at the end of that series anyway.
Yeah, probably.
It would be a bit like random to do that, and then have like, okay, bye then. But no, the prom was so good, and I loved that. Because I was joking like, oh, where's Jamie Lee Curtis when you need it? And then he turned out that he was actually showing prom night to those demon wolves, which like so funny. I was like, oh my god, love that. I love like the nod to prom horror and like carrying things was great.
And so, the fact that Cordelia nailed it from the beginning when she was like, oh, that hound has good taste. He's attacking, the fashionable guy. And it was right.
See, she's always got it somewhere. She's always thinking old chord. So that's not like, but yeah, the prom, definitely one of my favorite episodes. And then the final two, obviously the part one with all the fighting was fantastic. I really liked seeing sort of her and Faith and Angel having that sort of last hurrah, and her saying, oh, you always thought I was going to be like you. Well, here it is. And like the whole knife thing. What are your thoughts on their how well, obviously they have sort of left it, Faith is still alive, but what do you kind of think about how they tied up Faith, Buffy, and that kind of storyline in the finale?
I actually really love it. So when I watched the show the first time around, I actually came around to not liking Faith by the end of season 3. Like I was very much like, she just tried to poison but the love of Buffy's life. Like fuck her up, Buffy. And now as like an adult, I can see like, oh, she had it rough. She whatever. But I love it. I love the quiet moment when Faith is like, I'll dress up Big Sister's clothes, give us a kiss. Yeah. And they have like a pause before they start fighting. It's like they look at each other like this. Yeah. And I can hear the music in my head. I think it's like, so I think both fights are like really emotional. Yeah. Graduation Day, it's more like you're just like edge of your seat. Part 1, and then part 2, I'm just like, I'm so proud my children grew up and they're fighting together. Like, and I don't think that's always the case in genre where it's like the fight has this like emotional stuff behind it, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think her, and like when she was kind of like, you finally got me, be like, well done. I was kind of, again, that's when I was kind of like, oh, like, you know, in another world, like, you know, or another time, this would never, we would never have got to this point.
Right.
And but it was kind of, yeah, good to, it just kind of reaffirmed that I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I don't see Faith as this bad person. I just see her as someone who's made bad choices, which is kind of basically what Willow had said. But yeah, I think that was fantastic. And then for that cliffhanger, I was like, for God's sake. Then moving into like the final episode. I mean, when Angel was draining the shiz out of Buffy and like she kicked, like I was like, I know she's not going to die, but I was like, still, I was like, this is like, it was so like to watch just because you understood like what it meant. And I'm kind of, but I'm glad that it moved straight on to, okay, he's better now, let's get into helping her. Because I was like, oh, I hope we're not like, because for all of Angel's things, which we'll talk about the next line, but he's obviously quite a wallower, and I was like, bitch, we haven't got, I hope he's not going to be sat here going, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, we need to be
on time.
Yeah. So I'm glad that he had the initiative to like, right, let's just go and get it. But I loved, because at first I was like, why is she punching him? I was like, oh, that's why she's punched into me. Just make him angry. But I loved sort of that moment. But then him coming to help at the end and him saying, you know, well, he said it in prom when he was like, you know, it's just about tonight. And I was like, okay. But then I also liked that he'd said to her, I think it was it in that episode where he said, I'm just going to go after the fight.
It was that,
because I was like, I actually appreciate that he said that, because for him, that's him acknowledging, you know, that is him saying goodbye. Because if he hadn't done it, I would have been like, oh, he never said goodbye. So I'm glad that he kind of said, this is what I'm doing.
Agreed.
If I like it, just made it feel like, okay, he is trying to let her know, but it just at that moment you'll both be aware of what happened. And I loved his like mini brawl with the mayor because I was worried. I was like, oh my God, is everyone going to think that, like, is the mayor going to be like, take this man away, he's crazy? And I was going to be like, oh no. But I was kind of glad that he was just like being so stupid, or like, oh, it's okay folks, don't worry about it. And I was like, it was a lot. But then the big fight at the end was just fantastic and made me cry. Similar to you, like just seeing them all, because I was like, all the teachers and adults friend away, but I was like, why are all the students staying? And when they all like teared off, and I was like, oh my God, it was just, I was like, it was better than the final battle in Game of Thrones, I said in my reaction. It was just more emotionally driven. I loved seeing everybody come together. I love seeing, I always forget him, I just call him the gay one.
Larry.
Yeah, I like seeing like him, and then seeing, oh my God, what's the mean girl?
Harmony.
I literally just saw her in Buffy. I loved kind of seeing them.
Oh, right, so you already know that. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. So I've just I'm up to season. Yeah, I've just watched episode 3, so that was the episode. Because I literally said, I was because she gets bit in that thing. Like, I don't know if it's from that moment or not. I just kind of assumed that it was kind of from that moment.
They don't really specify, but because
I was like, oh, of course she was bit, because I thought, when she turned up, I was like, she was bit. So then when in season 4, when she was like that, I was like, oh damn. But just seeing everyone come together was fantastic, and just seeing them all have their moments to do. And then when they all turned around, and then like Angel was there with Wesley and all the others, and I was like, oh my God. And like Oz, it was beautiful. So go on.
It's when Buffy yells now that makes me tear up. When the vampires like get the kids and they're all running towards the vampires, that makes me tear up. And then when Cordelia stakes the vampire, I'm like, oh, my queen, I'm so happy for you.
I'm like,
fun fact about that, Charisma Carpenter asked to do that. She said that day, she was like, can I please stake a vampire? I've never gotten to stake a vampire. Cordelia would know how to do this by now.
Yeah.
And that Joss Whedon said, you've been nice to me today. You're the only one that isn't annoying me. Sure, we'll add that in. And it was like the day of, because she really wanted Cordelia to get to do something. And I think right? She was right. Like, of course she would have to know, but she's survived in Sunnydale this long. She would have to know like how to do it, right? Like,
I agree. That was one of my favorite parts, was seeing her do that. And then for me anyway, I felt like it set up now her being in Angel, because it's like, yeah, you know, she can look after herself. Yeah, she's always gonna have, you know, probably moments where she's in her own head and things like that, as she does to Cordelia. But I think knowing that she has that capability, you know, when it's called for, I think is sort of important. Again, kind of adds to her character arc in this series. Like, yes, she's passed, she's graduated, she is, you know, she has killed a vampire. So I absolutely like loved that whole scene. I've watched it several times since, even just that whole vibe, and I love
it so much.
it's so good. And then just like for them to go, like, for me, like crying, like emotionally, be like, oh my god, this is amazing, to like crying with laughter when, although actually it was like laughter and also like heartbreak when they blew up the school, because I was like, oh my god, like when he's in the library and then the mayor's like, well, dang, or something, and it just like in his like voice, it was so
good,
but so super, and I loved it. And also I was like, oh, when oh my god.
When Larry died? No.
Well,
Snyder.
Sorry, I shouldn't understand. Jesus Christ. Sorry, I thought it was like 4 episodes today on Mansa. Yeah, Snyder. Like, I was like, oh damn. You never knew where he was, and he wasn't really.
And you enjoyed hating him, right?
Yeah, of course. He was like that human, like, villain that you're like, oh my god. Like, he knew things were going on, but he just kind of brushed it under the carpet, because to him, I mean, again, I just loved like his like last time was like, this, you know, this isn't good. This is, you know, it's not orderly. This doesn't stand. I'm like, you know what? He died in his own morals. Like, bless him. He just wanted everyone. And the similar episode, was it true with when he catches them in the mare, like with the spiders, choices, and he's like, why can't you all just be doing drugs? And I just walks out with the chair. And I'm like, he was just, you know, one of those school head teachers that was just like, you know, he wasn't some evil, you know, a main big bad. It was just, that was him. So I kind of
a dick. Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of sad when he died, but I was like, oh, okay, you know, it was funny as well. So
I love Buffy's reaction, how we go on Buffy and she's just like she's not really that upset. She's like, oh shit.
She's like, oh well, that happened. And then when she's like, oh, this is Faith, you want to come and get it, dick? And I was like, she didn't listen to his not swearing rule, because he said no swearing. But like that moment was just like fantastic as well. And yeah, the finale itself, double barrel. I mean, without giving too much away, in terms of for you, how does the finale hold up across the series?
It's still one of my, it's still like, so
still a favorite.
My top 3 are always the same, which I won't say because they're later on, but Graduation Day and Becoming are probably like neck and like it depends on my mood which one I love better, but I think both of them are like still some. Buffy doesn't have a bad finale, I will say. Like there isn't a one where I'm like, that one's not that good. There isn't one that I could say that about. So, but it still is like top 10 for me.
Top 10? There's only 7 seasons?
I meant of episodes. There's 22 episodes a season.
Okay. I thought you meant like of finales. And no, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I really loved it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the rest of the finales hold. But yeah, as you say, I think it was the perfect wrap up for that season, and kind of being about the end of school. And I think, yeah, you couldn't. I feel like if you did every season finale like that, you'd be like a bit boring and like same stuff. But I like that it was for this season, and even I feel like prom was included in that like finale, that kind of the school kind of understanding and coming together. So I love that. And obviously at the end we did say goodbye to Angel for the time being, and at least for the time being on the Buffy show anyway. Did you think it was right for him to leave at that time? Like, what were your thoughts on the whole Angel debacle since he came back?
This is the first time revisiting it that I've thought this, but like it almost feels like in season 3 they had nothing to do with him, but they brought him back because he was getting a spinoff. Because their relationship, it feels like it's like a secret, then it gets out, and then she's like, we can't date, and then suddenly they just are. Like it doesn't feel like there's like suddenly it's just like, oh, Xander sees them kissing and then they are hooking up, and then like in Choices or one of those, she calls him honey when they're like hunting. Wait, what? And there's the first time I thought about it that way, that it feels like until prom he didn't have much to do. Like it feels like prom was like the moment they were keeping him for, like, we want it, Buffy deserves this, which she does. And it feels a little like he was kind of circling the drain till he got his own show. I'm glad he did. I love Angel too. But I think like, I mean, people always argue about the vampires, right? Spike and Angel are the main vampires on the show.
Yeah.
And people are always arguing. And I mean, Spike is more dynamic and also hotter, but I do like Angel for what he is. It was time for them to break up, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely with you. Like, I felt it was kind of like when he came back, that was kind of like, oh, he's back. Like, what could it mean? Blah, blah, blah. But then, yeah, I feel like he was kind of underutilized in the rest of the series or the middle of the series. Cause it was kind of like, well, we're not telling people, or he's kind of here and he's kind of not. And wait, we're going to go through this whole. I mean, I kind of liked seeing the conversations that were had when she came clean in the end. Well, she had to, and she was like, Angel's here, and the stuff with Giles and things like that. I really liked those elements of it. But yeah, I feel like him as a character in that series just felt a bit like in the last three episodes after they broke up. I was like, kind of like, you kept seeing it was like, oh yeah, well, I'm going to, and I was like, okay, well, stop, like, don't let me. I don't need to see him then. Like, I would have been fine if they would have like, I don't know. I suppose it felt like it was coming already. Like, there was a lot that happened in the late half of the season that I was like, because at first I wasn't sure whether Angel, because I really knew nothing about Angel, was a prequel series or not. But then as things went on, like, and like the mayor was saying that thing, and she was like, we'll be all right, when they were kind of like leaning on each other, like, and I was like, they both don't seem 100% sure on that. Kind of made me think, okay, maybe he will. And then as it went episode after episode, I was like, okay, he's leaving, and that's where Angel comes in. But yeah, I agree with you. I feel like it was time, and he was kind of just there as like an additional fighter.
So, yes, when they needed like another set of muscle. Yeah.
But I think David is really funny, and I think he played like, I mean, I loved Enemies when you're like, oh my god, he's bad. I was like, what the hell is happening? Like, this is crazy. I can't believe we're doing this again. But I think it's fantastic that he was able, I mean, obviously he knows how to play Angelus, but like, he did a fantastic job cutting from that. But he also does comedy really well. I think his like, because he's like so like deadpan as a character, and he's quite like, oh yeah, like he does that really well. And I think that's why I still enjoy his character, and I'm sort of intrigued moving forward with Angel, how he does as a stat like on his own without being Ken and Barbie.
Yeah, I will say I think they realize that about him, and they give him a little, not a lot, but they give him a little bit more moments of where he can do some comedy shit in Angel.
Yeah.
Because I think it's weird, right? Because that's not his character at all, but he is really good when he gets, I think that's when he's actually best, when he like is allowed to be a little sillier. Or when he's in Jealous, just clearly he's having fun. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I loved like in the finale where he was delirious, and he was like saying to Will like, oh, well, at first I was really like emotional because I thought, oh my god, he thinks it's Willow and he's just thankful he's got a friend. I mean, I personally would have liked a moment like to see him recognize Willow as like someone he like as a friend. But anyway, when it turns to be Buffy, I thought it was quite funny because she plays comedy so well as well.
Yeah, I every time I hear that scene or see that scene, I think of, I once read a fanfic of Angel and Oz, and that's when Oz is like, oh, he did it to you too.
You too, huh?
Yeah,
I love that. Oz went a bit further, maybe. I feel like he'd be down. But yeah, I love. Yeah, that was a great. And yeah, I do like Angel. I'm looking forward to seeing him again. I've only seen the first couple of episodes of Angel, but see him sort of fleshed out on his own in that series, and also, I'm sure at some point we'll see him again in Buffy, and kind of how their relationship, like, was something I don't necessarily want to see. Kind of now, this is talking about the future of Buffy, from season 3 onwards. From the future, it's been finished for 20 years, George. But the only thing I'm nervous about them coming back together at any point is like, I don't want this to be the whole thing where for the rest of the, like, I love them together, but I can't be having like every time together, oh, the unfrequented love. I'm like, guys, let's move on. But I feel like maybe that will always be the thing, because I feel like Buffy's very unlucky in love. Oh, even just from the last few episodes, I feel like
that's actually a thing that I appreciate about the Zeppo, is that it makes fun of how like the Xander episode, how like we cut to them being like so dramatic, and Xander's like, "Ooh, should I come back?"
Yeah. It's like
I
a lot.
appreciate that. Yeah.
That the music stops and he's like, and then it kicks up again. I was like, that was hilarious. But yeah, I think moving forward, when they do see each other, I think obviously there will be an acknowledgement because she hasn't seen him and that. But I think it would be nice just for them to kind of be on a platonic moment. I don't know. So we'll see. But in terms of season 3, anything else that I haven't mentioned that is like that you love or that you wanted to talk about, or that anything that sticks out?
I will say, so season 3 is my favorite. Season 5 is my favorite. Season 3 is they're mostly tied.
Yeah.
And both those seasons have my favorite villains. The mayor is also one of my favorite villains, I will say.
Okay. Yeah, I did really like the mayor. I thought it was because he'd kind of been mentioned in the last season. We didn't really see him. So I was like, I thought it was great to see him. And I liked his character because, of course, he's like, nothing bothered him. Like he was like 100 odd years old. Like I thought he was a great bit of comic, like a comic break, but also I still felt like he could cause some serious damage with what he was doing. So it wasn't like,
yes.
I don't trust that he's a villain. Like I definitely did. But I thought, like, to me, his comical bits were like unhinged comical.
Yeah.
Where it's like, how is this guy, he's truly unhinged that this is what he's thinking about right now. So
he could kill anyone in the room with him.
Yeah, exactly. It's like so I did really appreciate that about him. And I'm intrigued to see in the next, in season 4, kind of who or what the next big bad is, because 3 episodes in, there's some people with guns and masks patrolling the university, so I'm intrigued to see where that goes. But we shall see, maybe, or maybe it won't go anywhere. It's just me. Like I remember when Oz first, when he's like had his hair dyed, and I was like, "There's something wrong with Oz. Like, why is he dyeing his hair?" And Nick was like, "No, he just dyes his hair, and I think it's because he was in another show at the same time." And I was like, "No, there's something going down." He was like, "I've seen the show. Just don't think about it." Like,
I will say the hairstyles barely mean anything, but I've had people say that to me when they start watching, because I don't know if I can't remember when Felicity happened, but that's when shows started putting like hairdos into their contract, because Terry Russell cut her hair, and then so Felicity had to. But on Buffy, there's a lot of like that her hairstyle changed halfway through the episode. And you'll notice that like Cordelia gets a lot of different hairdos starting in season 2 of Angel.
I've heard about a certain hairdo, so I'm not looking forward to that. But yes, I mean, as I said, wrapping up, season 3 to me, fantastic. Absolutely loved it. And it's really like, not invigorating me, because I have been really enjoying the show. It's funny when I'm away from it, like if I don't record for like a week, which is rare. But if I don't, when I get back into it, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad to be like back in this world. And so I'm really looking forward to moving forward. As somebody who's obviously seen the whole world several times, I imagine, what would you, for season 4, for example, what would you say to someone who's going into season 4, either to like look out for, obviously not spoilers, but just like what, anything, what, I don't know what I mean.
God, no, there's nothing I can think of that's not a spoiler.
It's not a spoiler. Okay, fair enough.
I can tell you that season 4 is one of my it would be lower ranked on my list of seasons, but it has my 2 favorite episodes of the series.
Okay. Yeah, I season 4, I really know not well. I don't know anything about any of the seasons really, but season 4 I know nothing about, other than I know the name of one episode. I say I know the name of one episode. Is it called Hush or something? Or okay. I don't know what happens in that episode, but I've heard people speak.
That's my favorite
about,
episode of the series.
Okay, so I thought, because Nick had mentioned like Hush, well, he was like, "Oh, Hush is great," and so that's all I know about the season. I think I'm kind of going in just wanting to enjoy it, because I heard from a lot of people that season 3 is their favorite, and all I hear anybody talk about is season 5. So I'm kind of like in that bit where I'm in the middle, where I'm like, I want to get to season, like I don't want to be like just trying to get through this to get to season 5 to see what the hell season 5's about. I'm trying to kind of be, because I found before, like when I did Game of Thrones, season 5 of Game of Thrones wasn't a very popular season, and everyone had told me like, "Oh, season 5 is rubbish," blah blah. But then I ended up enjoying it because I went in with such low expectations that I was like, "Oh, it wasn't that bad." Like,
I wouldn't be surprised if that happened with 4. And also, I say lesser favorite because there is no bad. I would say there's no bad season of Buffy. So like, I just say like, oh, I like it less than others, but I like it more than many other seasons of many other television shows.
That's fair. That's fair. And then, okay, to round off, then, what is in season 3, if you had to, your favorite and least favorite episode?
My favorite episode, I think would be Graduation Day Part 2, just because I love that battle. It's not often that I find a battle so emotional, or like a big fight. And my least favorite.
Now I'm looking back at mine now, trying to see.
Might be, you know what? No, it's Consequences, because that one's kind of boring. The one after Faith kills the guy.
Yeah, I can see that. I think, for me, my favorite would either be the prom, just because I was like so emotionally invested in that by the end of it, or the finale. Least favorite, I also really liked, actually, which I didn't mention, but I would like to chat out, is Helpless was a great episode. I loved, like, it felt like a horror film. Which I love. Maybe my least favorite episode was probably Gingerbread. Maybe like, I didn't like with the whole with Moo and things. I was a bit like, oh, because I'm a Joyce fan, I was like, this isn't her. So maybe it annoyed me.
I really like that episode, but it's not well liked, so you are not alone.
Okay, fine. Again, it's not that I don't think there was an episode in this series that I disliked.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe there were not disliked, but there was probably some in the first 2 seasons that I would go, yeah, I wouldn't choose to watch that again. But season 3, I could see myself rewatching the whole series again, definitely. And I absolutely plan to. But Ian, thank you so much for joining me today. We've gone a little bit over, but that's absolutely fine. Ian, if nobody, which would be odd considering this is a Buffy-centric video, but if nobody knew who you were or how to find you, where can they find you?
You can find my podcast, SlayerFest98, at SlayerFestX98 across all social media platforms. We are on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts if you want to subscribe. And I am at ENX Carlos if you want to follow me. And I have a horror podcast with Zachary Patton Garcia, which is at My Bloody Judy.
There we go. He's everywhere. You can find him in all sorts. Well, now, Ian, thanks again for joining me. I'm so glad that we got to make the time. It was a blast. And yeah, I'll be filling you in on the rest of the series. So thank you. And thanks to everyone who was watching. Let us know in the comments below your thoughts on season 3. Did you agree with what we said? Did you not agree? Just probably most likely when it comes to me. Let us know your favorite episodes and all that jazz in the comments below. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And yeah, until next time, see ya.
Bye.